everybody's ready to go with their phones if they're taping. I'll give you a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then I'm going to start on the brain. Okay? 3, 2, 1. We're going to look at the sheep brain first here, and there's some structures that we need to know on this. You've got the left hemisphere, right hemisphere. That's divided by this deep crevice, which is the longitudinal fissure. So that's the longitudinal fissure there. Here is a separate organ actually from the brain. This is the cerebellum down here. That's the spinal cord. Now I'm going to turn it over. We're going to see a couple cranial nerves. These are the olfactory bulbs or olfactory nerves. These are the optic nerves here and here. These are going to come off of the brain and go to the back of the eye. Where the optic nerves meet in the middle here at this X, that's called the optic chiasma here. Here's a couple parts of the brain stem here. This first bump is the pons. Then this longer bump here is the medulla oblongata. That continues on down then as the spinal cord here. Now what I've done is I've cut a brain down through the longitudinal fissure, made a mid-sagittal cut, and we've got the right hemisphere of the brain here. So what we're going to see on here is this, which is the corpus callosum. That's what I'm pinching here. This is what holds the brain together internally. And that pocket that it's kind of protecting here is the lateral ventricle. So cerebrospinal fluid would be flowing through the lateral ventricle of the brain to the third ventricle, which is this pocket here, and then it would flow down to the fourth ventricle, which is this kind of crevice here in between the cerebellum and the brainstem. So we have lateral ventricle, third ventricle, fourth ventricle. And again, that's the cerebellum. Here's parts of the brainstem, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. Then there's the spinal cord. So those are the structures that we need to know on the sheep brain. Let's move to the cow eye here. This is what we see when we look at a cow. That's the cornea there. That would be the anterior structure we need to know, the cornea. When I turn it over, what we see is the optic nerve. So what I'm pinching here is the optic nerve. So that would be, as I showed you before, it would come off the brain here and here, and then go into the back of the eye to innervate vision. So there's the optic nerve. Now I've already cut this one open, so I'm just going to flip it open. And the first structure we see is the lens. I'm going to pop that out. So there's the lens. That lens covers the hole there, and the hole is the pupil. So that's the pupil, and surrounding the pupil is this black stripe structure. That's the iris, and cows all have a black iris. We have different colored eyes, so our iris will be blue or green or brown. As we move to the back, the posterior chamber of the eye, we're going to see 3 different layers. The most superficial layer of the posterior chamber is the sclera. That's what I'm pinching here, this tough fibrous part. That's what kind of makes the eye round there. The middle layer is this pretty blue-green stuff. This is the choroid layer here. And the deepest layer is this yellow, thin membrane. That's the retina. And I'm not going to pull it off because it'll tear. But the retina is the deepest layer, and then we see the choroid here and the sclera. So those are the structures that we need to know on the cow eye. Now we're going to look at the cat nerves, and there are 10 of them that you need to know. We'll start here in the arm, and I'm going to lift all 3 of them at the same time. What I'll usually do is lift all 3 of them, and if I want to identify one, I'll just clamp one of them. So the most superior nerve is the radial nerve. The middle one is the median nerve, and the inferior nerve is the ulnar nerve. So radial, median, ulna, from superior to inferior. There are 2 of them that run down the thoracic cavity that we need to know. This long one here is going to the diaphragm muscle, which is our chief muscle in breathing. So this nerve that innervates the diaphragm is the phrenic nerve here. And then this nerve that's going to the heart, this is the vagus nerve. So vagus nerve, cranial nerve 10, is going to innervate the heart. Phrenic nerve innervates the diaphragm muscle. We're going to see a couple of them down here in the legs. There's a very long, thin one here, runs the entire length of the femur. That's the femoral nerve. And then there's another tiny, teeny one way deep in the groin area here, way medially. And this is very tiny in this cat. It's going to be difficult to see. Look how thin it is. I'm not going to lift it too hard. It's just going to snap. This is the obturator nerve. So the obturator is going to be really close up here in the groin. And the femoral nerve will be this longer one that runs the entire length of the femur. Femoral nerve here, obturator nerve here. And then there's 3 more of them that are on the back of the cat's leg. I'm just going to kind of pull these apart so we can see them all. The big one here is the sciatic nerve. Sciatic nerve runs down the length of the leg, and then it's going to split or bifurcate into 2 different nerves. This is the common fibular nerve here. Just trying to get that to the side. Common fibular nerve here runs on the lateral side of the leg because that's where the fibula bone is. So there's the common fibular nerve, and then this one is going into deep into the gastrocnemius. That's the tibial nerve. So the sciatic nerve here branches off to the common fibular, which runs on the lateral side, and the tibial nerve goes into the gastrocnemius. It's the 10 nerves you need to know. Okay.